Can they hear me? They hear me live out there. Next beat. That ain't the beat I wanted.
Those was wood beats
beat.
right
Another
there.
beat. Nope. Give me another beat. Give me another beat. Nope, that's not it. That's the beat. Turn it up.
Oh, or
Turn it up. I gotta hear it a little louder. Can you make it louder than my headphones? Turn me up in my headphones. I'm still stuck in the 80s/90s. Lottos, kangaroo boots, natty ghosts, Velas, jumpsuits and troops, Junos, color Levi's, Bugs Bunny sweaters with the rhinestone ring on it. Fighting and making up the next day. Nobody getting shot. Working a hustling to get it, a get got. We had love for the streets, our family, our foes, our friends. Respect for the elderly. Pager/payphone, sneaking into Adams Theater. Watching Crush grooving tougher than leather. Hopping gates out the college port to bang out, cause you don't wanna get caught at mom's crib or at Bond's crib. Eating funny dinner with the fam. Church every Sunday, 8 o'clock a.m. And even if I fell asleep in the back row or played sick, no matter what, man, I still had to go. 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper. 80s, baby. He's a DJ, I'm the rapper.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is the XCast webisode number 52. It's day 4805 in the search for Tim Shovelday. I am your host, Josh Houslander. With me as always, producer, the man behind the boards, Adam Hernandez. What's up, Adam?
Nothing much, man. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. I started the show like that on purpose today because I just had like a weird flashback a few minutes ago. When I first started podcasting, our producer told me that I say "Hey everybody" too much. Like, you have to stop saying "Hey everybody." Sounds stupid. You say it way too much.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, so that,
I think there's anything wrong
for
with it.
some reason that just like popped into my head a little while ago. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, I'm going to start the show with "Hey everybody."
Hey everybody. How you doing?
Hey everybody. It's Josh.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Well, back then, I was known by Squirrel when I was first podcasting, even when, first on the Majors live with you and stuff. And so that was like how I was like, hey, everybody, this is Squirrel from Detroit Rowdy Radio.
I'm not going to say what I was known as, but go ahead.
But, that was, I don't know, it was just like my normal introduction. Like, stop saying that. You say that too much.
I think it's fine. I think getting on somebody for something like that when you're podcasting is really stupid.
Yeah, but I like broke myself of it though. I don't think I've said it in quite some time.
I've got to break myself of my use of the ums.
Oh yeah.
I can't. When I go back and I listen to myself, I can't stand it. I bug the shit out of myself by the amount of times I use that. I think I use. I just did it again.
Now you're not going to be able to stop yourself from doing it.
No, I know.
No, it's like I'm gonna say "Hey everybody,"
hey, everybody.
I'm gonna start the next 10 shows with that.
Yeah,
and then you're gonna have to pull me aside and be like, "Hey Josh, I know I said it was okay, but you're saying 'Hey everybody' way too much."
The other one too, I can't stand it. I do it all the time. Is when people will say, you know.
I haven't noticed you saying that, but. It could be. I don't notice you saying either.
Really? That's good, because I'm probably going to be doing it a whole lot tonight.
We talked about, we just mentioned it's day 4805 in the search for Tim Shovelday. But we're actually going to talk about that a little bit tonight. Not about Tim Shovelday directly, but Tim to the Timmy, my favorite hockey player, my idol, my boy Tim. His coach died, man. Brian Murray.
Yep.
Brian Murray. He was, when I talk about Brian Murray, I'm talking about the good old days, or actually the pre-good old days, when Brian Murray was the coach and GM of the Detroit Red Wings. He still was acting general manager of the Ottawa Senators, but just lost his battle to colon cancer at age 74. So it's a bummer. Brian Murray he's a staple in the NHL. I love Brian Murray.
No, I did. You know what? I think Brian Murray kind of gets I don't think he's appreciated as much in Detroit for what he actually was. With the Red Wings. And Brian Murray. Look, Brian Murray wasn't the greatest coach.
No.
Wasn't the greatest GM.
I think he was a very good GM. I think he was a
fine GM.
I think he was a decent coach.
What Brian Murray was a nice bridge.
Yeah.
He was a nice bridge from the just decades of mediocrity in the 80s, because that's exactly what the 80s were.
The Dead Wings.
The 80s was full of mediocrity. when it was Jacques Demers as the head coach, and
who you could argue was a better coach than Brian Murray, or viewed as a better coach than Brian Murray.
You could make that argument,
but I prefer what
you
Brian
gotta have some respect too for Jacques Demers. I mean, the guy did it when he was illiterate. I mean, he was legitimately illiterate, and he came out and he admitted to that later on.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually went on to become part of the Canadian Parliament too.
Yeah,
I believe. But Brian Murray, though, was an excellent bridge from the mediocrity in the '80s and just the awfulness that was the '60s and the '70s for the Detroit Red Wings. Brian Murray was, like I said, he was a decent coach. He was a good general manager. He's a pretty good general manager. But he helped usher in a new era for Detroit hockey, which ended up being a dynasty era for the Red Wings. And he was responsible for getting some of those iconic players in here. And
I mean, they never got to play for him directly, but the players that Brian Murray brought in, it reads like an all-star team or like a Hall of Fame roster, or, you know, I mean, that's what it reads like in essence, are the people he brought in. You know, to me, if you're going to say anything about Brian Murray, like his epitaph on his tombstone, it probably says something like more like father or something, like that, but his hockey epitaph is basically, he's the top guy for turning around a franchise, for taking a garbage franchise and turning it around, making it great. And then you pretty much, once he does that, you got to turn it over to to the big name coach and the big name GM, and then they really win the cup.
I mean, because keep in mind too, he was the GM of the Red Wings when Scotty Bowman's first season as the head coach for the Red Wings. So he was the GM still. And Brian Murray's mistakes helped lead to, actually, it's kind of funny looking at it like this, but Brian Murray's mistakes as a general manager actually helped usher in that new era. Because one of the mistakes that Brian Murray made, as a general manager, was not getting an adequate number one goaltender for the Red Wings. He tried to go with a young Chris Osgood. It didn't work. He tried to get, and I'm sorry to say this, he tried to go with Tim Shovelday. And
he traded away Tim
Shovelday. And the last straw was trading away Tim Shovelday. But it wasn't just the idea of trading Tim Shovelday, because no matter what people think, and I know that's kind of been the running thing here, but Timo has to be honest with himself. It was never going to get done with Tim Shovelday in net.
Especially after his knee problem. Tim had 2 good years and two really good years.
Yes.
All-star goalie in the NHL. I know we love to talk about Tim Shovelday here. And, we actually don't even talk about him that much, but we do mention his name in every single podcast at the beginning. But that's, he blew out his knee. I think it was his knee, wasn't it? I think that was his issue. And a lot of people think, we got rid of Tim, and we got, I call him Tim. I feel like we're on first name basis. Most people refer to him as Shovelday. But, they say, we got rid of him, and we got Vernon. That really isn't true, though. Tim Shovelday was traded for Bob Essens. And actually... And the last thing I want to do is rip on Brian Murray, because I love the guy. But that was a crappy trade, because we didn't trade him straight up, failing goaltender for failing goaltender. We actually traded Tim Shovelday and Dallas Drake, who ended up being a pretty great player later on.
We traded
Tim and Dallas Drake.
He ended up being a good
Bob
player.
Essens,
Yep, and Sergei Boughton too. That was the other guy that came over in it.
Oh, did we get this? Okay,
they got a guy named Sergei Boughton as well.
Never heard of him. Next.
And the thing is Dallas Drake. Getting rid of him was actually... It sucks, because Dallas Drake actually went on to have a pretty good career. Now, ironically enough, Dallas Drake would eventually find his way back onto the Red Wings, and he won a Stanley Cup in his final year in 2008.
Was he on that team?
He was on that team,
Jeez, I didn't remember.
And he was a very, very good player for the Red Wings that season.
I mean, this obviously wasn't... Where would Dallas Drake's role have been on a team with Sergei Fedorov, Steve Yzerman, Brett Hull, I almost call him Bobby Hull, Brett Hull, Luke Robitz. I mean, where would he have been on that team? Probably sitting on the bench or in the minor. So he would have. We needed to get rid of him.
He would have been in the same place that that he was when he made his return back to the Red Wings. He would have been a third or fourth liner, and that's it.
Right.
And like I said, he was a grinder.
Mm-hmm.
Turned himself into a really, really good grinder, really, really good third or fourth line player. Got his minutes, and when he came back to Detroit, he took on that same role, and he was very, very good at it. But as far as the whole Bob Essensa thing, like I was saying, that was really the last straw. It seems like with Brian Murray, because the Red Wings during his tenure, it was a short tenure.
Mm-hmm.
He lasted from 1990 to 1994. He's 3 years head coach, all 4 years as the general manager. Couldn't get a starting goaltender in here, and Bob Essensa wasn't going to cut it. The Red Wings made it to the playoffs every single year that Brian Murray was here, but they never made it past the second round. And during those years, I mean, the 94 season, as general manager, they couldn't get past the San Jose Sharks, an expansion team. And that was one of the worst losses I have ever remembered as a Red Wing fan.
Was bad.
That was, the Chris Osgood giveaway in his own zone, and he was crying afterwards, thought the team was going to trade him, and blah, 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 blah. And then they had the Toronto series in 93, which was awful. But yeah, Brian Murray just couldn't get it done when it came to a starting goaltender. When they got rid of him,
yeah, but
Scotty Bowman.
He's always the guy that turns it around, and Scotty Bowman wouldn't have even thought about coming here, would have even dreamed about coming here if Brian Murray had turned the team around. He wouldn't have come to the crappy Red Wings that existed before Brian.
Exactly.
Murray.
No, I think you're absolutely right. If we were talking about the same team, the same Red Wings team that people were used to seeing in the 80s, a team that made it to the playoffs one year, missed it the other year, made it to the playoffs this year. You're right. I don't think Scotty Bowman would have considered it. I think he probably would have stayed in Pittsburgh.
Or gone somewhere else.
I mean, because when in Pittsburgh, he had a pretty good thing going there. I mean, you had Mario Lemieux, and you had an up and comer in Jaromir Jagr. I mean, you had an excellent team there. I mean, in modern day sense, that would be like voluntarily leaving the Pittsburgh Penguins when you have Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin on that team. I mean, that's the current comparison that you could draw to that.
Right. Yeah, leaving that team to go to the Red Wings.
Yeah. Now, like certain guys have gotten fired, like Dan Bylsma has gotten fired from that spot, but. Again, I mean, that's the comparison to modern day hockey, modern day NHL.
Scotty Bowman would have been a legend anyway, but what he did with the Red Wings makes him even more of a legend. And Brian Murray, he just he plugged away at it. He just kind of kept making those trades, and Keith Primo for Paul Coffey.
No, it was
Jimmy Carson.
It was
for Paul Coffey.
Jimmy Carson for Paul Coffey, then
Jimmy Carson for Paul Coffey, then Paul Coffey for Brendan Shanahan.
Well, no, that wasn't Brian Murray. That was Scotty Bowman.
Okay, that may have been Ken Holland.
No, I think that was.
Either way, that's how we inevitably.
That may have been Scotty Bowman.
That's how we inevitably got Brendan Shanahan, was from that Paul Coffey trade. And
if you want to go back and
we
look
got
at
Paul
it like
Coffey for Jimmy Carson, who that was Jimmy Carson. Jimmy Carson didn't become the superstar that many thought he would become. But I used to wear number 12 when I played hockey, because of Jimmy Carson. I like Jimmy Carson.
I think he was originally 11 when he came over.
Carson was?
Yeah, but they had to give him another number because they were retiring that number.
Jimmy Carson, just a little bit of trivia. I'm missing one though. Jimmy Carson was traded for a whole bunch of Hall of Famers in his if he has a claim to fame. If he has a claim to fame as in hockey, he was traded for Wayne Gretzky. Jimmy Carson was traded for Wayne Gretzky before that, and then was later traded by us for Paul Coffey.
My mom was actually friends with Mike Krishalinsky, who was the guy that was traded along with Wayne Gretzky from Edmonton to L.A.
Ah, okay.
So Yeah,
Very
and he had a bunch of stories about it and everything, and about Gretzky and his wife. They're interesting to hear.
That's cool. Gotta love it.
Yeah,
Gotta love old hockey.
but yeah, Brian Murray.
Bummer. Rest in peace.
Sad to see him go. Another thing too about him is he was diagnosed with cancer back in 2014, I believe. But he came out, just before he died, I believe, and he said, I could have had cancer 10 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's
no,
awful.
it is sad, and and I would never criticize somebody for doing the opposite or for going either way, but something about the balls behind a guy like that who knows that he has terminal cancer and he just keeps working.
Yeah,
I love that.
No,
it is cool. I think it's cool, and I just give him credit. And this is an absolute paraphrase here. I'm not quoting him, but I kind of, it was kind of sad. But a couple of years ago when they were talking to him, they basically, in essence, he said in his interview, and they said, "Well, are you going to retire?" And he just basically said, "Doesn't look like I'm going to get a chance to retire." In essence, is what he said, and it's sad, but it's cool.
Definitely.
It's a cool way to go out, and I just appreciate that. He obviously loved the game of hockey, and he did it till the end.
You know what? He's probably stronger than I am in that sense, because being able to do that just kind of, in many senses, brush it aside and continue
right.
with your everyday life. I mean, it takes balls.
I'd probably be either huddled up in a corner somewhere, or at best sitting on a beach, forgetting about the world.
Yeah, I mean that takes balls. That takes courage, and I don't know how anybody can't admire.
Right.
Anybody that does that, whether it's Brian Murray or whoever, it's quite amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. We got. See, I said that time.
Did you?
Yeah, that was that one.
Here, how about here? You know
that
what?
That was on me.
Here we go. Brian Murray.
To Brian Murray.
There we go.
The Bri. But unfortunately, the U.S. is the United States. Let's divert from Canada. Let's divert from the NHL. Let's go to the U.S. U.S. is kind of a mess right now, huh? I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on. North Korea, we got riots. We have
North Korea blinked. They blinked today.
Yeah, they did.
Which I think everybody knew that was going to be coming. Or they said, you know what? We're not going to go ahead and strike Guam. Yeah, probably a smart move.
Hey, you know what? I don't. Donald Trump is he's such a strange individual. He really is. He's you have to give him some credit though for that. It's his leadership in essence that caused North Korea to back down. They did. These guys are not known for backing down. He called them. I know the media wants to say, "Oh, they did something after he gave the ultimatum," and he didn't. I don't really buy that. News flashes and sound bites crossing each other in the airwaves. I don't give that original one as a back down by Trump or North Korea. But North Korea, like you said, they had North Korea blanked. They backed down, and and I guess I give them credit because I'll be honest. Part of me is saying, I don't know. I mean, even last week on the show, Adam, I didn't say this directly, but I was kind of saying, like, isn't it maybe just time to just bomb the hell out of these guys? For jumping in here now, and just saying, because basically if they would have done something, if they'd have bombed Guam, bombed somebody else, I'd have been saying, hey, this is the fault of us, of the Western world, of somebody for not stopping this madman.
I actually think we said this off air.
Did we only say it off air?
I think we're having this conversation off air.
Okay, then I'm glad we're saying it now. But I'll give some props to Trump and to Tillerson for saying, no, we can handle this, without killing a whole bunch of people. And thus far they have. I still kind of feel like North Korea just needs to be stopped, but at the same time, we proved one thing, and this is something that most people thought, but it's also something that, quite frankly, I wasn't certain of, and that is the idea that Kim Jong-un is not suicidal. He's not totally crazy. he's crazy in the kind of evil crazy sense, but he's not crazy in just the throw caution to the wind sense.
Well, that's what everybody was saying, Josh, prior to all of this, even during, the saber rattling coming from both sides, was that Kim Jong-un he's homicidal.
Right.
He is definitely not suicidal. He's smart enough to know that if he's going to keep power, if he's going to hold on to his own power, if he's going to continue his family, dynasty in that country,
sure,
you don't continue that by provoking or, in a sense, attacking the United States. You attack the United States, you're North Korea, you're going to be gone. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. I mean, it's impossible for North Korea to succeed in that standpoint.
And Kim Jong-un has always been, I know these root words are in essence the same, but Kim Jong-un has always been provocative. But he gave it a shot as the true provocateur, and he kind of got owned. I mean, he got put in his place here by the rest of the world. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next at this point.
That's the biggest thing, Josh, is what does happen next with this? Because Kim Jong-un isn't out of power.
No.
I mean, Kim Jong-un is still there. But you're right, though.
If I was living in Seoul, South Korea, I wouldn't be any less nervous now than I was 2 weeks ago.
No, and you know what? I totally agree. And the funny thing is, though, is people have been talking to people in South Korea, and it seems like this is something that they're completely used to, though. I mean,
right.
They know that war against North Korea. Well, I guess technically they're still at war, but hostilities can break out at any time.
Sure.
And
that what you just said is something that people should know, and a lot of people do know, but a lot of other people do not know that the Korean War started in 1950, and it never ended.
Yep.
There is a ceasefire, in essence, a blockade. The line has been drawn in the sand, and neither side of Korea has chosen to truly pass the line.
Correct.
But that war never ended. Korea is, as you know by the names North Korea and South Korea. There once was a Korea. This was a country, and it's not because, well, in some ways you could say it technically is still a country, and they are in civil war with each other and have been for 67 years, I believe.
Long time, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, we haven't had people dying, from the casualties. People have died in North Korea for certain. But you haven't had hostilities, in quite some time. But the hostile action, or the hostile sentiment, remains and never hasn't remained. And both of those countries definitely want to control all of Korea, if they could. If they could do it, they would. But we show that Kim Jong-un, at the very least, is smart enough to know that when you're trying to talk nuclear war, when you're trying to talk, big bomb modern warfare here, you can't hide in North Korea. You just can't. Kim Jong-un would be dead, not out of power personally, not diminished. He would be actually personally dead, and so would his family if this were to happen. You can't hide from the U.S.'s weapons in North Korea.
No, you can't.
The country's just not big enough.
Not big enough, and yeah.
There's no hiding there.
Nope.
At best, you could leave the country and call the bomb in, and then you still lose everything you own.
Not only that, I mean, you've got to assume that when you're Kim Jong Un, you have to be just completely on edge as far as people trying to overthrow you, which is, I'm assuming, and this is what everybody says, is the reason why he's in the past he's gone and killed senior members of his
even uncles and family
uncles
members.
exactly, just because he's afraid that that people are going to overthrow him, which is why they say he hardly ever leaves the country. I don't think he's ever left the country, actually.
Well, I don't think he has. Yeah, I don't think he leaves his compound very often.
And I believe that...
I mean, just to golf every once in a while and shoot an 18.
Shoot an 18, yeah.
You know, it is weird, too, that, you know, what you're saying, too, is obviously Kim Jong-un's power isn't as solidified as he would like others to believe. And it would be very interesting to know what the North Korea propaganda machine is telling their people right now.
Oh, I could only assume.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's crazy. I'm sure it's insane. I'm sure he's probably telling them that either the U.S. backed down from a war or that he already blew us up. I mean, really, because judging by what he has told his people about himself in the past, the one thing you can be certain of is that he's not telling them the truth.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, you are talking legitimately. I mean, they make fun of it in the that goofy James Franco movie, but I mean, you are talking about a guy who legitimately has told his people that he doesn't poop. Because that's, you know, because he's above that. And that, you know, he tried the game of golf one time. He didn't like it much, but he tried it once. He shot an 18 and just thought it was boring. And that's it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is a goofy dude. But, hey, we got our own problems here in the U.S. as well. Adam, I know that you're, you know, not, you know, crazy about the rioting going on right now. Well, nobody likes it, but you're not crazy about the way Trump's handled this, I'm guessing, or with the riots down south and the...
No, I mean it's. I mean, what can you say? I think that. I mean, I do think Donald Trump was late in properly condemning it and identifying. I mean, because he's the one that says you have to take these things head on. Mm-hmm. You have to identify them by name, whether it's radical Islamic terrorism or white supremacy. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind that somebody died this past weekend as a result of white supremacists using ISIS-like tactics of using an automobile as a weapon to kill people and cause terror. Donald Trump failed to recognize this by name, something he's criticized everybody else before in the past, and something Donald Trump is very, very good at doing himself when it comes to identifying specific things or individuals to attack and then going at them full force. Donald Trump, I don't think there's anybody in the United States that will disagree on that point and that point alone. In fact, that's a big reason why a lot of people voted for him. Right. Is it because he's direct? He finds something, he's honest, and he will attack it. He will attack it. Mm-hmm. And that's something he failed to do. That's something he failed to do with white supremacists. In his initial response, he decided to execute some moral equality among white supremacists, neo-Nazis, KKK members, white nationalists, and individuals who were protesting that, who were counter-protesting that. And he gave a response yesterday. It was either Sunday or yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Where all of a sudden he goes out and he condemns it. He condemns the KKK. He condemns white supremacy. 48 hours...
Late to the party, but for certain. But you can't really... I mean, he did say the right thing, right?
He did say the right thing when he was pressured. However, Josh, today he comes back and he basically blasts that response that he gave yesterday, basically saying that wasn't him. No, my original response on Saturday was the correct one. He doubled down on what he said Saturday as opposed to what he said yesterday.
I don't really have a problem with what he said originally. I understand I don't see any complaint with what he said. I think the true complaint, if there is one, is what he didn't say. And he did come out and say it, but then, yeah, I mean, he does. He steps on his own foot a lot. You know, he puts his foot in his mouth. He even when he says the right thing, he tends to put his foot in his mouth. And I want to put it to you one way, Adam. Listen, you know that I was not a Barack Obama supporter.
I do.
And you know that I wasn't necessarily crazy with the way Obama handled, the shooting of cops and some of the riots he had going on during his administration. I wasn't crazy about it, but I didn't really have a problem necessarily with what he did. I did have, but a lot of people out there have a problem with what he didn't say.
You're talking about Barack Obama.
I'm talking about Barack Obama right now. Now, I didn't jump all over Obama for not saying the right thing. And I'm not prepared to jump all over Donald Trump right now for not, because basically what's happening is they were were being criticized for not saying the other side's rhetoric, in essence is what's going on. I was not prepared to jump all over Obama for this then. I'm not prepared to jump all over Trump now. But, and this goes to your point, Adam, there were people who did want to jump all over Barack Obama for that, and those people were Donald Trump and Donald Trump supporters. Those people did jump all over Obama for this.
You're talking about his base supporters.
Yes, a lot of his supporters. Because I do not want to lump in all Trump supporters into anything.
No,
I'm not lumping them into.
You know what?
They're certainly not all racist.
I'm not going to lump all Donald Trump supporters in with them too, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that held their nose and pulled the lever for Donald Trump when they went to the voting booth.
Right.
But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of people out there who are really just trying to support him because, either he's my president, or he's from my party, or he's whatever. I know there is, but so I'm not prepared to jump all over Trump, but Trump did. Trump did jump all over this, and many of Trump's backers jumped all over this when other people did it. So I do feel that in a lot of ways, Trump does have to be held to a different standard. Just like when, and I've said this before on this show and off this show, when people are talking about, when people give the excuse for Donald Trump that, well, Congress is so corrupt, Congress is blockading, Congress is doing this, they very well may be. They might be. But I am going to feel free to criticize Donald Trump for that because Donald Trump was going to drain the swamp. Donald Trump wasn't going to be hindered by those idiots in Congress and by the fake news media and by do I think everything the media tells you is true? No, I do not. I don't buy 80% of what the media tells you. But people voted for Donald Trump because that wasn't going to matter when he was president. So to say I'm going to drain the swamp, I'm going to bypass all this, I'm going to succeed no matter what, and then use that very thing that you said wasn't going to hinder you as the excuse for why you're not getting something done or for why everything isn't perfect, I don't buy it. I would buy it if he came out in a more somber tone and said, listen, I'm still trying to drain the swamp here. I'm trying every day, but I can't do it overnight. But he's not. He's just hiding behind it and saying that it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah, and I know that one thing that you said you had a problem with when it came to Barack Obama is he was, it seemed like he was constantly campaigning, which,
yes,
again, that's not something I agreed with you on, but again, I'm not going to, Barack Obama's not in office anymore.
Right.
So there's no point in debating that anymore. Yeah. Donald Trump, though, certainly does seem like he's still continuing to campaign, which every single time that you talk to him or you back him into a corner, it's, well, I won the election by, this many points, and, it wasn't, it was such a tremendous, victory, and blah, 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 blah. And that's the thing right now is it still seems like he's trying to hold on. And this is the thing. Before, I didn't know whether or not Donald Trump was actually a bigot. I'm not one of those that goes out there. I know this is one of the big criticisms of people on the left is they're always one to go out and say, oh well, everything is racist.
Right.
I'm not like that. I try not to be like that. I don't want to go out and consider everybody racist. I'm not going to go out and call you a racist just because you identify yourself as conservative. I'm not going to do that. I know you. I know you're not a racist.
I'm a federalist and a libertarian.
Sorry, you and your labels. But I'm not going. That's not what I'm going to do. But the thing is, though, is when I look at Donald Trump, before, I never wanted to identify him as a racist. That's, for me, is changing right now. It's changing for me because when you talked about Barack Obama and you weren't happy about his response when it came to, the police shootings and so on and so forth. Okay, that's fine. I'm willing to listen to your argument about that. But when it comes to a guy like Donald Trump, who has had these instances of in these questions regarding whether or not, is he a bigot? Whether it was the thing with the judge, the Mexican judge, or the way he classified Mexicans as being rapists and murderers and drug dealers, and then referring to somebody as my African American, and there's just all these little things that kind of snowball and add up, and then you get what happened in Charlottesville this past weekend. And his response to that, he was given a layup. He was being.
You're right. It's an easy one. That should be. I was going to say slam dunk. You said layup, and
he was given a layup. He was being served a beach ball, and he couldn't take it. And I don't know if it's because he is totally tone deaf to the subject. I don't know if he's actually a bigot, if he's just trying to hold on to that portion of his base, or if it's all of the above. But this was easy. Donald Trump, the only thing that he had to do was come out and say, look, you know what? It's sad when you turn on the TV and you see violence happening in any sense. You never want to see that happen. But you know what? Members of the KKK, the neo-Nazis, white supremacists, white nationalists, I just want the American public to know that me, my campaign, my administration, my presidency wants nothing to do with that movement. They have no place in America, and I totally disavow everything that they've done, continue to do, and everything that they do in the future. If he would have come out and said something like that, it would have been over with.
Right? No, it is. It's an easy one, and that's why a lot of Republicans were, criticized him as well. And listen, I don't think he's a bigot. I actually don't. I think he's a lousy politician, and I do think he's pretty tone deaf to a lot of these situations because I think he's too stuck in his Twitter box, and. But I definitely don't think he's a bigot. And I liked his comments later. I think his comments later proved that he wasn't, and I think they actually proved that in a lot of ways he's tone deaf, like you said. One thing I will say, Adam, I didn't disagree with what you just said, really. I know you were kind of expecting me to, but I didn't disagree too much. One thing I will say in defense of me, not in defense of Donald Trump per se. But when I was saying that about Barack Obama, that he was always campaigning, I was saying that in his second term.
Oh, okay.
Because you're term limited. It's,
sure.
We have constitutional amendments prohibiting you from getting that third term. Every president still campaigns in the first term. It's an ugly truth, So yeah, you're gonna hear Donald Trump still campaigning as president of the United States for the next 3.5 years. You're gonna, and I don't like it. I don't like it either. I'm not sticking up for Trump for doing it, but yeah, he's gonna do it. Obama did it. Bush did it. But when Obama was still doing it in his second term, I took it as something that, this guy doesn't know how to do anything else. He doesn't actually know how to be a leader. He's just campaigning. When you actually get the mandate from the American people in that second term, because in my opinion, even if you skate by with 41% of the vote and just barely squeak out the Electoral College, you win a second term, you've been chosen by us. You're in the elite group of guys who's actually, you served as president for 4 years, and we chose you to do the job again. You know, and you are now term limited for that. So you're still campaigning then. Like, I just don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where I think George W. Bush actually did like a decent job with that. He did a lousy job with other things. He was a different guy.
There was
from
a
first
lot
term to second term. Where
but there's a lot on GW's plate.
There was
too. That's the economy taking a nosedive and
9/11 in the economy and
9/11 was his first term, but
right, but that had happened. So now he's in his second term. He's living in a post 9/11 world.
Yes,
you know, he's in his first term and his second term. He's serving in two very different types of America. Basically, in essence, is why I bring up 9/11. And I also bring it up so we can plug a show that we're doing on September 12th of next month, where we'll be discussing 9/11 and potential 9/11 conspiracies, actually.
Yeah.
So check that out. It will be not even our next deep issues, though, but that will be.
It's two deep issues from now.
Right. But you should definitely check it out. One thing I do have a problem with is, and maybe you can, because I'm being real here when I say this, maybe you can explain this to me.
Go ahead.
To some degree, but you hear this term alt-right all the time. And you occasionally hear alt-left as well. But yeah, I have heard that term used as well, but I think that's kind of like a copycat thing that they're throwing out now. But what is this alt-right? I feel like this is a kind of an insulting term to normal, everyday people who are on the right, who... You know, they're acting like, oh, you're just a few steps away from being in the alt-right because you're on the right. But where does that term come from? Because what am I missing here? Because these people are not ultra-right-wingers. They're not. That's not what it is. I mean, if you know anything about the ideological spectrum in political science, and I know I'm a nerd for this stuff, but where does that come from? Why are these alt-right? I feel like that is kind of like a creation of the media to criticize the normal right.
Well, I don't know if it definitely wasn't a creation of the media. I believe it originated from guys like Richard Spencer, who helped coin the term, and it may not have been just him. I'm pretty sure there were some other individuals associated with it. I know that there's other guys out there like an Andrew Anglin who.
Who is that? That name sounds familiar.
He created the website The Daily Stormer, and I hate even mentioning it on our airwaves here.
Okay, but is this a term, and I'm not trying to interrupt you, I'm just trying to, is this a term that they're using to describe themselves, or is it a term that somebody else is using to describe them?
Oh, they use it to describe themselves.
Okay.
Like what I was saying, that Andrew Anglin guy, he has basically a rundown of what the alt-right is on his website. I mean, I
know
think
it's used a lot in European politics.
I think he calls it, a guide for noobs or something like that. But
because a Nazi is not a right winger, despite what your college professor may have told you, a Nazi is by no means a right winger, and the KKK do not have a right wing ideology. And they certainly aren't conservative, not by the political definition, and definitely not by the dictionary definition of somebody who conserves or is conservative, aside from politics. So I don't get this. I mean, a Nazi's a National Socialist. You're certainly not a right winger if you're a Nazi, and even you can make more parallels to a leftist. When I say leftist, I do not mean a liberal. I do not mean a Democrat. I mean a leftist. When you can make parallels to a leftist and a communist, they're not the same thing. But you can make parallels to that, or even to throw in progressivism as defined as, communist light or something like that. That.
Which you've called me before, but go ahead.
Right. Oh, hey, you know what, though? Listen, communism has a bad connotation to it. But it doesn't have the same kind of negative connotation that fascism has. When talking about what it's done historically. Communists, such as Joseph Stalin, who were actual, card-carrying and ideological and philosophical believers in the communist ideology, they were really bad people and they killed a lot of people. But you always can give examples of where there's good communists. Karl Marx was a great guy, all this stuff. Go to any university and you will hear about how communism is great on paper and all this stuff. You know, I mean, these are reoccurring things. You will go to college and you will read. I mean, if you get a liberal arts degree in college at a decent college, you will probably read Communist Manifesto. You won't read Mein Kampf. I mean, that's fascism. And you could make those same arguments for fascism that you can for communism, that on paper it doesn't sound horrible because Nazis aren't fascists. There's nothing in fascism that directly says you kill Jews. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a Nazi thing. That's a Hitler thing. That's a genocidal maniac thing. Just like there isn't anything in Karl Marx's writings or in Engels' writings that say you gotta kill 10 million Russian peasants. And no, that's not a thing. That's not part of it. This was supposed to be a political or an economic ideology, not a genocidal thing. So communism doesn't have the same kind of negative connotation as fascism does. So to say somebody's communist light, in essence, is just saying that they are, you know, that they are a left-winger and they believe in something.
And you've made that distinction in the past, too. You know, for sure you've said it in the show where you know, referring to like somebody like Bernie Sanders, when you call him a socialist or a communist, and you're saying, like, I'm not saying he's Joseph Stalin.
No, not at all.
I'm just saying that
I'm not even saying he's Vladimir Lenin. I'm not saying this at all. You know, I'm not saying that by any means. But yeah, I have said in the past, and I've been criticized for it, that Bernie Sanders is a communist. And when I say this, I like to say to people, show me what in Bernie Sanders' ideology, show me something from Bernie Sanders' platform that is to the right of Communist Manifesto. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, just from a purely ideological standpoint. You know, Karl Marx wrote the book on communism, literally. So show me what is to the right of that in current democratic socialists, or in, you know, in Bernie Sanders, or even in an Elizabeth Warren for that matter. You know, show me what is to the right of that. And that's not a criticism of them. If you like that, fine. Just know what you are believing in.
So your problem then with the alt-right is I don't want to say your only problem, but your problem with the term is just the term itself.
Yeah, just the wording, just the vocabulary.
Okay.
No, because I have huge problems with these groups, but when I hear the KKK described as alt-right, I think, well, you know, I'm thinking as a historian here, well, the KKK was started as the brute force arm of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing conservative about a KKK ideology. And Nazis, well, they were National Socialists. They had parts of fascism, parts of communism, parts of totalitarianism. It was actually like 2 parts, 2 parts communism, 2 parts fascism, then dump the bottle of totalitarianism on top of it. You know, is your basic Nazi ideology, but certainly not conservative. And hey, I understand also that right wing doesn't necessarily mean conservative either, mm-hmm. but it kind of does here, and I don't like that. I just don't like the terminology alt-right because of that.
According to Wikipedia, the alt-right or alternative right is a loosely defined group of people with far-right ideologies who reject mainstream conservatism in favor of white nationalism, principally in the United States, but also lesser degree in Canada and Europe. Paul Gottfried is the first person to use the term alternative right when referring specifically to developments within American right-wing politics in 2008. And I think, and again, going back to that whole Donald Trump thing, and again, that's
I don't disagree with that. That is not a bad definition at all.
Yeah, but that's the thing that's the problem. That's something else that people have a problem with in Donald Trump's response, just because of some of the people he's chosen to surround himself with, like a Steve Bannon, who said that his former website, Breitbart, was the platform for the alt-right. Mm-hmm. Or a guy like Stephen Miller, who was all chummy and buddy-buddy with a guy like Richard Spencer when he was at Duke. Those are the dots that people are connecting when it comes to Donald Trump in that sense, and what he said and didn't say this past weekend, and even today when he mm-hmm. came out with that double and triple down statement from this past weekend.
I guess, you know, maybe what I should be saying instead of having a problem with it, because even I'm not analyzing the vocabulary properly. I feel like people should really put the alternative back in alt-right. Put the alternative back in alternative right.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that I think that's really important for you right-wingers out there. You know, you really don't say alt-right. Say alternative right. Because it's an alternative to the normal thing that you believe. I'm not even for their, you know, I'm not even 100% behind their ideology. I'm not a Republican. But I do feel for people who have this legitimate normal ideology. They're just a regular person, not racist, and they have conservative beliefs.
I don't think Republicans are racist.
No.
I don't think Republicans are racist.
There are racist Republicans and racist Democrats.
Sure there are.
They're out there for sure.
And you know, I was quite pleased by a lot of the response that Republican congressmen were having today in response to Donald Trump. I think they need to do more in continuing to hold Donald Trump's feet to the fire and holding him accountable for the things he says and doesn't say. But you know what? I think, and in some sense too, I think people can only be on board with something for so long before they're like, okay, you know what? I've defended you, you know, maybe to a fault in the past, but I just can't do this anymore.
And, you know, hey, by the way, USA and the rest of the world as well, it's Congress's job to hold the president's feet to the fire. It's their job. And it's not the job of the Democrats to hold the Republicans' feet to the fire or the Republicans' job to hold the Democrats' feet to the fire. It's Congress's job to keep the president in check. Checks and balances. It is their job to do that. So this idea that you're a rhino because you criticized Donald Trump, you're supposed to criticize the president.
And you know what? In a sense,
and support him when you can too. You know,
and in a large sense, it has been working. I mean, Donald Trump, for as crazy as he is and as crazy as the shit that he said during the campaign and the stuff that he's tried to do, checks and balances have kept him in check.
Right.
It's been working.
And one thing I will say in defense of Trump as well too, because he's been doing okay, you know, with the economy and with other things. I actually don't blame Trump for bringing up the economy randomly or for bringing up different things, because one thing's true. I don't buy into the whole fake news thing. I'm getting so tired of hearing those two words back to back. But it is true that the media won't report on things he does right. So he does have to come out and say, hey, look at the economy. Look, you know, I mean, and I'm not one to give, when it comes to the economy, I feel like the president has the quarterback syndrome in a lot of ways. I think they get undue credit, undue criticism for what happens. Doesn't mean that they don't have any effect, but I don't think they have anywhere near as much effect as they would like you to believe. But both the Republicans and the Democrats won't ever say that because they want their next candidate to be able to talk about all the great things they're going to do with the economy.
I don't have a problem with Donald Trump talking about the economy either. What I do have a problem with, though, is when he leads off with something like that when we just had, you know, a national tragedy happen.
And you know, that is my biggest problem with this guy, and has been since he was running for office, is he just doesn't know how to talk. And I know his supporters love the way he talks. You know, I do. I know that they love it. But it's not doing the rest of the country any favors. So yeah, I mean, people say, well, he's not a politician. No, he is a politician now. Okay? He wasn't a politician.
You know what? He's been a politician for a long time.
He has, but if you want to make that argument, well, he's not a politician. I don't care. He is now. In fact, he's the most powerful politician on planet Earth. So you better start acting like it, at least to some degree. You don't have to change completely, but yeah, you could lead with, it's very easy to lead with, any violence is senseless, especially when it comes from, you know, this point of racism, which is just obviously evil and terrible, and I weep for their families, and I don't understand why, you know, of course we're a free country, and of course we have freedom of speech and everything else, but I don't understand why anyone would be involved in a neo-Nazi group or the KKK or anything else. You know, I mean, and then take 10 minutes to talk about the economy and how great it is. Say, hey, on the bright side, look at this. Yeah, fine, do that. You know, I mean, I get it, but you know, South's kind of under attack though too. You know, with these other riots, right? We had them tearing down monuments of you know, Confederate monuments, and it's kind of a mess down there. You know, I feel like that's one form of bigotry that, for whatever reason, is allowed. You're allowed to be a bigot towards the South. and I don't like that. I don't like bigotry. I don't like people criticizing the South, and I feel like, you know, when it comes to them ripping down monuments, like there is a moral argument. Mm-hmm. I've heard others say this as well. This isn't me completely, but there is a moral argument for saying we shouldn't have Confederate monuments. We shouldn't have this stuff. I think
there's a patriotic argument that can be had for that.
There should,
too.
yeah, moral. Yeah, I mean, I lump patriotism with morality in a lot of ways, especially, you know, American patriotism. I do. I lump that together with morality, ethics, and there is a moral argument, a patriotic argument. There's many good, positive arguments to be made for not having these monuments. I'm not saying I support it or don't support it. I don't have a problem with it completely. But there is not a moral argument for trashing public property. There's not a moral argument for going in and starting a riot. There's not a moral argument for trashing a piece of art, real, you know, in essence. And one must remember when it comes to American history that a lot of these Confederate monuments were put up. You can always make the argument, well, Confederacy equals racism. I get it. The Civil War was fought over slavery. I don't care what your college professor told you, you know, or what your middle school teacher taught you. The Civil War was fought over slavery. Slavery was racist. Slavery was bad. Slavery was terrible. But one thing that people should remember is that when the South was decimated after the Civil War, many of these monuments went up to reunite the nation, to bring those people back in and say, listen, you're not evil just because your grandpa or great-grandpa died in the Civil War for the Confederacy. They were still Americans too. They weren't necessarily evil. These guys were just farmers. The vast majority of people who fought for the South in the Civil War never owned a slave. You know, they really didn't. The vast majority of people in the South never owned a slave, ever. So a lot of these monuments were put up to reunite a nation. And they're simply honoring the memory of, you know, the unknown Confederate soldier. The guy that, you know, died fighting for a cause that he thought was right, but we fought against them. That was an uprising, it was a rebellion, and we smacked it down pretty good. And a whole lot of people died. But that's why, you know, we count the deaths on both sides as American deaths in the Civil War, because they were all Americans. The Confederacy never existed. So these are important things to remember, that, but so many people just want to look at anything, you know, every Confederate flag and every Confederate monument and every statue somewhere down in the Deep South as, oh, they're racist rednecks. That's just as bigoted as something as what a lot of people in the KKK and these neo-Nazi groups preach.
My biggest problem with these statues is oftentimes where they're located. Mm-hmm. For instance, the one in Durham, North Carolina, it was in front of the courthouse. You can't have, especially in 2017, really, I mean, you shouldn't have ever had a Confederate statue in front of a city courthouse, ever. Just from the optics.
A good, just argument can be made from that perspective.
You can't do it. You can't have a Confederate flag flying outside of a state Capitol building. It's not. Look, I have no. And one of the arguments against this is, why do you want to destroy history? Why do you want to destroy history? Preserve history. I'm all for the preservation of history. Have these statues in a museum. Have it in another location that isn't a bureaucratic spot within a city or a state or whatever.
I am 100% okay with that viewpoint if and only if the people espousing said viewpoint are willing to condemn the riots and destruction the way it's happening, and if they will back that up when these same people who are rioting want to destroy the stuff in the museums.
Look,
because that is coming.
Look, if people start going and destroying stuff in museums, because you know what, we have stuff in museums that aren't good. I mean, I'm sure you go to the Holocaust Museum and there's Nazi. There's Nazi artifacts in a Holocaust museum. Are you going to go and destroy stuff in a Holocaust museum because there's Nazi artifacts in there? No, probably not, because unfortunately in that dark era of human history, the Nazis were gassing Jewish people, and unfortunately at a Holocaust museum, that is part of it. Nazism is part of a Holocaust museum because they were obviously the antagonists of all of this.
But in a Holocaust museum, there's a certain ideology, that I agree with and that I don't see how anyone would disagree with.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But there is a certain ideology there. I don't think that the only way you can preserve a Confederate artifact in a museum is by placing it as, and these were the evil enemies we fought.
No, you know what?
I don't agree with that.
No,
and I don't even... listen, I don't have a problem with... Listen, if there's some story you have, if you're telling tales, if you live in Germany, I would hope you're not an anti-Semite. I would hope you're not... and I know that in Germany, many of those people still exist, but I would hope you're not. But there is nothing evil about telling tales about your great-grandfather who fought valiantly in World War II. If you live in Germany. I don't see... People are allowed to have their own history and to talk about it.
Sure,
and I feel the same way about Confederacy, and the Confederacy was not as bad as the Nazis, but there was major issues. They were fighting for slavery, in essence,
Sure, but you know what, Josh, I mean, I'm sure you're not going to go to Germany and find a picture of Himmler or a statue of Himmler in front of a federal building there.
No, you won't.
I'm sure that's not going to happen. And the thing is that
there is no Himmler or Hitler equivalent in the Confederacy, though.
No, there isn't. But
Robert E. Lee was a good man in a lot of ways.
Well, the thing with Robert E. Lee is he didn't want statues of himself put up afterwards.
Right.
He didn't want anything like that. And the thing is,
I don't have a problem with a statue of Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson or an unknown Confederate soldier. I don't. Should they be off the should they be sitting at City Hall? Perhaps not. I don't disagree with you, but I do disagree with the rioting. I do disagree with people from a different state who have a different ideology coming in and trashing an artifact in the South. I have a huge problem with that.
The thing is that like I said, you always want to make sure, you always hope that something doesn't result in a riot.
Mm-hmm.
Something doesn't result in, I just did a I'm trying to catch myself. You don't want something to fall into anarchy.
No, you don't.
You want some order. You want a civilized society that isn't always rioting when they disagree with something. But the thing is, though, is when it comes to something like this, has have these statues been petitioned to be taken down, and it's been glossed over and not taken into account?
These weren't people from the state.
Of course.
Who are petitioning. These are people that came from other states that were funded by radical groups.
No, don't say. Come on.
Well, but they were, though.
No, we don't know that. That's a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy theory. Whether or not I know
these people weren't all Southerners.
The George Soros stuff. I know that's a popular thing among people who.
And you don't think there's any truth to that?
Entirely, absolutely not. I mean, the other way of going about this is all that stuff that was happening on with those marches and everything with the white supremacists. Were those the Koch brothers undertaking?
No,
that?
but there's no proof of that whatsoever. That there is proof of George Soros giving a lot of money to these groups that then go do this. So there is some truth to that.
To me, that's more of a reach than anything.
I mean, these
else.
the people that knocked down the statue came from Ohio. And this is a liberal town that was doing this, and the police watched them do it.
I'm not gonna say that just because you're part of another state or you live in another state doesn't mean you can't protest racism or injustices in other.
You can protest it. You can't destroy property
in other states.
You can't destroy
property. Yes,
you can't start riots.
I would love to see this undertaken the proper way as far as.
Gerard, I'd like to see it ignored.
What's that?
If you live in Ohio, or you live in California, or you live in Montana, or you live in Detroit, and they have a statue that you don't like that much in the South, I'd like to see you ignore it. I don't see why it matters, and I don't see why it's really any of your business. It's no big deal. It's ignored. It's like any other statue up somewhere. It's just a statue, man. It's just a statue. It's a statue down there that meant something to somebody, perhaps. Ignore it, and it will never be worthwhile ever again.
Exactly. This is a statue, so let's just remove it from federal buildings. Let's remove it. Let's remove it from state
but not
buildings.
Forcibly.
Let's remove it from city buildings.
Yeah, but not forcibly. Not in terms of a riot. Not to be knocked over and spray painted.
Okay.
That's not right. But Adam, I'm definitely not trying to cut you off. If you want to say something else, I won't say anything else about it. But I do want to move on to this last topic.
Sure.
We got is crazy, and it's scary if you ask me. But we talked about this a little bit off air before the show, and we were both like getting the willies when we were talking about this stuff. But This is about a month old, this story, honestly, but it wasn't heavily covered. Actually, not a month old, about 2 weeks old. But Facebook has a research lab called the FAIR Lab, Facebook AI Research Lab. And they are doing a bunch of stuff with artificial intelligence. And they had to shut it down a little while back because the artificial intelligence that they had created its own language to talk amongst itself that the humans could not understand. In essence, they created a new language with no human input whatsoever. And they shut this thing down.
Such a bad idea.
And, I mean, this to me is iRobot Terminator stuff. I mean, this is what I'm struggling for. What's the thing called in Terminator?
Skynet.
This is Skynet stuff. I mean, and they did shut it down, and they said they're going to take a break from it for a little while, which I guess is good. But that a little while will be just that, just a little while, and they'll get back into it. But this AI created new language with no human input. There's a good article about this by Tony Bradley. He's a Forbes contributor. There's an internet article, but he's a Forbes guy. And I don't know. This scares the hell out of me. Is this scary to you, Adam?
Of course it's scary. You have we talked about this one on one of our deep issues when
we did a singularity.
We did a singularity episode, which is this is exactly what basically singularity is. It's artificial intelligence, and look, artificial intelligence can obviously be beneficial. However, when it gets to the point, you have to assume there is a point in artificial intelligence when it gets too smart. Mm-hmm. And it starts to work against you, which is obviously what happened in a movie like Terminator, in a movie like iRobot, when technology starts to get too big for itself, and it starts undertaking its own purposes.
Well, I feel weird too because I'm a radical on this. I'm totally I'm freaked out. I'm paranoid as hell. I admit it. But in this Tony Bradley article, he's really good. He's the one kind of towing the line here, and he's saying hey, I'm not saying get rid of all this stuff, I'm not saying anything. This is, it's scary, but this is really beneficial in a lot of ways. I'm not saying we go back to some Luddite society. That's a quote, that we go back to. And I'm reading it thinking I'm saying that I am to destroy all the computers. What's going on? This is crazy to me, but this is really scary. And what's scary to me is that you have a lot of the top names in this field. They're not saying, oh, it's all right, or it's just gonna happen, it's it's really necessary. But Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, and Bill Gates have all been quoted on several occasions saying, no, this stuff is really scary, we have to watch out for this. They're gonna get us. They're gonna become smarter than us, and they're going to do something bad. I mean, this is, Bill Gates saying this, Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking, the smartest guy in the world. I mean, this is what they're telling us with this stuff. And the thing that just scares me, just the most basic principle that's so scary about this, is that why create... the computers do not need to create a language to do their job. But why create a language? The only reason to create your own language is so somebody else won't know what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's the only reason to do it. I mean, if you're in a jail cell, you and one other guy, and you both speak perfectly good, fluent English, and you create your own language randomly and start talking amongst each other, the prison guards are going to say, what are they saying? Obviously, they're saying something that they don't want us to hear.
And they're probably going to eventually separate them.
Yeah, I mean, this is bad. And to me, that's the only logical conclusion when you hear that computers are doing this. What are they saying? They're saying something they don't want us to hear. I don't know what it is, but it can't be good. And the other thing that scares me even further with this, when I really get deep into this, really get paranoid into this, is this idea that, do the computers now, I mean, if they've been communicating with each other, I mean, if they're already a little smarter than we're giving them credit for, and I don't know if they've become sentient yet. That's the big scare, is that they will truly become sentient, which to me, this is a degree of them being sentient, actually. But they're saying, okay, no, these aren't sentient, but they did create a language. I'm I think you got to be sentient to create your own language. But that's just my opinion. I don't know the actual technical engineering terms for this. But now, are the computers going to know that, okay, that way didn't work? The humans caught on to that thing. The humans caught on when we tried to create our own language. So what can we do now instead that they won't catch?
That's exactly something that you probably need to be worried about, because computers aren't going to stop learning.
No.
Eventually, it's going to get to a point where, and we've already seen it, where a computer becomes smarter than the programmer,
right.
or it learns enough to become smarter than the program. And when it gets to that point, what's it going to do? Is it going to start thinking about what's best for its programmer? Is it going to start launching nuclear missiles like we saw in Terminator or that old Matthew Broderick?
War Games.
War Games.
Great game. A great movie. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen? What is the end game with something like this? And are we going to be able to identify when we've gone too far with something like this?
Right. I mean, I feel like this one, okay, they barely caught it.
Because technology is so cool.
Right.
And we're always striving for ways to make our lives easier through technology. I mean, like I said, I've got one of those Roombas going on in my house right now.
Dude, really?
Vacuuming up the floor.
Awesome.
And there's been that recent speculation and worry that it's mapping out your house and sending this data back to whoever.
Oh, jeez, you're scaring the crap out of me, Adam.
But it's not just that. I mean, before we talked about the microchips being embedded into your wrists, and then we have this thing going on with Facebook right now. I mean, is this all connected? Is it? What's going on with it? I mean, and did we really identify it, or have we identified it too late? Are we too late?
It's the thing. It's Facebook, so I can only assume that this is tied into the internet. So this idea that they shut it down, it's like you can't stop the signal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. How do we know that they didn't teach this language to a different computer in Beijing or in it's somewhere else? And it's not this one language that scares me. It's just this idea that the computers were trying to hide something from the people.
And maybe
that is what they were doing.
And maybe we don't need to be worrying about Kim Jong-un.
Right.
Maybe we need to be worrying about the computers.
Well, and the thing is, and I kind of don't buy into this to some degree, because I feel like this is human logic trying to guess what the computer's logic will be. But the scare is that the computers will look at humanity and say, obviously you guys are doing this all wrong. Obviously this, look at how did you let a guy like Kim Jong-un gain this power? And, the scare is that, in essence, they will say humans are a liability. They're not worth the effort. They're a pain in the butt.
You're talking about from a machine standpoint.
Yes, yeah, that is the scare. That's the fear that they will say.
They can't be trusted.
Yeah, you guys obviously can't be trusted with your own well-being.
Yep.
So we will do a better job.
Yeah, we need to take care of you.
Right. Or we need to get rid of you. And it's a scary thought. It's scary. I mean, this stuff scares the crap out of me. And again, I'm glad they shut it down. But to me, them shutting it down is just... It's almost too little too late. I mean, it's there because they're going to shut it down until somebody next year decides to turn it back on. Or redo it or do it again. And just because this, Facebook happened to catch it. But these AIs are being created all over the place. Just because Facebook caught it now, IBM's computers might be doing the same thing and nobody caught it yet. Or there might be some mad scientist somewhere creating one who doesn't want to stop it. Wants to say, no, I want to keep going. I want to see what this does.
Yeah.
I want to see what this language is all about. Let's see what they do with it. Scary stuff, man.
Absolutely.
Scary
Absolutely.
stuff. But hey, we got a news section for you tonight, so let's do Around the Empire with Adam Hernandez.
Yep, we do have a news section tonight. Let me go ahead and get it brought up. But yeah, Josh, I think we all have to take a good long look in the mirror and realize, or try to determine when it is that we need to stop.
Right.
When it is that we need to maybe draw back a little bit with...
Say, okay, we can cut it out. We have enough technology now.
Yep.
The technology has made our lives easier. Let's continue to make our lives easier, not to make our lives worthless or undoable.
Yep, absolutely. In the wake of everything that's been going on with Donald Trump and the and obviously the everything that what was said and wasn't said from this past weekend, his manufacturing council that he's been touting with CEOs from around the country.
Mm-hmm.
He lost another one today. Another one stepped down. AFL-CIO President Richard Trumka and Deputy Chief of Staff Thea Lee issued a joint statement on Tuesday regarding the resignation of President Donald Trump's manufacturing council. This comes after the Merck CEO, Ken Frazier, also decided to step down based on Donald Trump's lack of response from what happened this past weekend. So
Under Armour's did as well.
Under Armour's, yep.
Although he did not say, he didn't give any reason for it. He just, he didn't make it a political thing, but he did step down as well.
Yep, absolutely. And let's see, what else do we have here?
And that's I feel like that's big news. Trump says no big deal. I got a million more CEOs to line in there. He probably does. I feel like this is destined to happen. And I do feel like in some ways they're not right, they're not wrong. It's okay to do this, but if you have a council like this, you're going to have guys stepping down because these guys are not politicians and they're going to get sick and tired of this crap real quick. Yeah. You're going to have a revolving door of these guys because they don't want to do this. They're CEOs. They're used to, not that they don't work hard, they work real hard, but they're used to working hard and seeing profits. Mm-hmm. And they work for themselves. They don't work, they work for their company. These guys aren't public servants.
Well, when you have a president, too, with an approval rating in the low 30s,
right,
being associated with something like that probably isn't the best thing for business to do. So
I think these guys were just looking for the first excuse to bow out, and they took this one.
You're a history guy, Josh. Donald Trump compares George Washington to Robert E. Lee. Let's see if I can get a soundbite up with this one. Where's my sound? Hold on a second. Where's it? I don't know why I'm not getting sound out of this. But let me see. Am I missing something here? Whatever. I'll read it to you. He said, this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder if George Washington is going to be coming next week. He also says the same thing about Thomas Jefferson, just because they were also slave owners. Right. My argument against that would be that neither George Washington nor Thomas Jefferson ever fought in a war to preserve slavery in the United States.
They did not. Although, I mean, it is true. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson both owned a lot more slaves than Robert E. Lee did. I don't know that it's coming at the right time. I don't totally disagree with this. I do feel that there is that is the next step in this movement, and that does bother me a lot. It does. I don't mind guys like Robert E. Lee or even Stonewall Jackson being memorialized. I really don't. It's even though they were on the wrong side of this war. But Robert E. Lee, he was descendant of founding fathers as well. Richard Henry Lee signed the Declaration and was around for the Constitution and everything else. So, but Robert E. Lee is the example of that guy that really was trying to just fight for the South, and at least that's the picture that's painted of him, is that he's trying to fight for the South and fight for states' rights and serve what he viewed as his country, even though it wasn't really his country. I mean, his country was the United States.
Was the slavery issue the only? Obviously, it wasn't the only thing. Were there other big bullet point issues, though, aside from slavery,
state rights
that the Confederacy were like anything specific though with the with state rights?
States' rights and just the federal government staying out of their business. The Confederacy. The most comparable thing to the Confederacy, I would say, to their system of government or to their desired system of government was actually the United States under the Articles of Confederation.
Okay.
The Articles of Confederation, well, it was a confederacy, confederation, you see that word again. And in essence, it's this idea that the states should not be beholden to the federal government.
Okay.
That the states were, to Robert E. Lee, he was a patriotic Virginian, not a patriotic American. He was a patriotic Virginian. And that he wanted Virginia to stay one of the states of the United States of America, but he was more loyal to Virginia than to the nation, in essence, because that was his nation, and in his view. One of the big switches, I'll actually go back to kind of tie it in easy. It's they talk about this in one of the National Treasure movies, actually. And this is very true. It's a really excellent point they make, and it's something that should be said more often in history classes. And it is said in history classes, but should maybe be said more often. But Nick Cage makes the point in them that before Lincoln, it was you would say the United States of America are instead of the United States of America is. The United States of America is going to war. Is the sentence we would say now. Before that, it would be the United States of America are going to war, as in they're plural. They're a group. We are, they are a group of states. But then the United States of America becomes known as a single entity, a singular entity. Which one's better? Which one's worse? I'm not, here to debate that. But that was a big deal, even in the, late 1800s, still early 1900s. Of how your president would say that, if he would use the plural or the singular when talking about the United States of America.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Another White House news as well. Steve Bannon, White House chief strategist, could be on his way out by the end of the week, according to CBS. And this comes via the New York Times as well, as pressure is mounting to let go of the White House chief strategist, which is also the Trump campaign. I don't know if he was the campaign manager.
He was in
later,
there, though.
Yeah, later on in his campaign, actually left his role as CEO of Breitbart to undertake that new position with Trump during his campaign, and eventually carrying over to an administration role once Donald Trump became president.
I have a feeling he's going to be the patsy to get Trump out of this hot water.
Apparently, John Kelly isn't a big fan of Steve Bannon. They do have clashing ideologies. Steve Bannon's more of a isolationist, more of a nationalist in that regard. When John Kelly is obviously more open to, I don't want to say globalism, but he's not.
Kind of more of a traditional conservative.
More of a traditional conservative, there you go. So it certainly seems like there's some clashing with that. And the rumor is as well that Steve Bannon hasn't been working well with other members of the Trump team, namely Jared Kushner, who he's had run-ins with in the past. He had run-ins with Reince Priebus, former chief of staff in the past as well. That they had where actually it was said that Donald Trump came out to both of them and said that either you guys come to terms and fix whatever it is coming between you, or I will.
Right. Just cut it out.
Yeah.
Fix it, or I'll fix it for you.
Exactly. So it certainly does seem like Steve Bannon will probably be on his way out. But the thing is, though, with Steve Bannon is this isn't the first time that we've heard him kind of under fire within the White House. It was back in April that we were hearing the same rumors that he was going to be let go. But if it seems like John Kelly, the new chief of staff and the former Marine general, has certainly had a little bit of a push when it comes to having some influence of who stays and who goes, namely because Scaramucci isn't there anymore, and that is one guy that John Kelly certainly wanted to get rid of when he became chief of staff.
And that's why I use the word patsy. To me, I feel like Bannon was on his way out anyway. I don't think he was getting along with people in the administration. I think he was going to go. So I think they're going to use this opportunity to make him the patsy and just have him resign and step down. Mm-hmm. So then everyone gets to... It's a way that they can all save face by saying their spiel, and really it was probably going to happen anyway.
Video games, Josh. Dwayne Wade is not too pleased with his NBA 2K18 rating.
Oh, really?
Dwayne Wade is he's a... Wait, where is he? He is a... I just had it with me. I think he's an 85.
Well, he should have played better last year.
Dwayne Wade, no, he's actually an 84 for 2K18. He's not too happy with that, which I think is right in line with...
Sounds about right to me.
Yeah, with what Dwayne Wade is.
Yeah, I'm actually...
LeBron James is a 97.
I would have guessed D Wade at about a 78 for last year's performance.
He doesn't have any knees left.
Yeah,
his knees are gone.
I don't have a problem with it. Should have played better last year, D Wade.
A lot of tread off them tires. Have you seen the graphics though for the new NBA 2K18
I have
game?
not.
Oh my god, phenomenal!
Really?
Phenomenal graphics with these new sports games that are coming out. They did a side by side with some of the newer graphics in these sports games coming out, even compared to last year. Wow,
really?
Big steps being made when it comes to this.
Those sports games are incredible. I personally, as a gamer, I'm a retro gamer, and I don't care for them for the game itself. The graphics are incredible. The realistic nature of them is incredible. I don't think they're that fun because I think they're too realistic. I like to my games are but hey, I'm a retro gamer. I'm not ragging on them because they're awesome. But I'm more of a NHL '94 kind of guy and a Bulls versus Blazers, the NBA Finals kind of guy. But that's just my personal preference. But these games they're hard to play in my opinion.
Some of them are. I've always been a fan of the hockey games. I've actually been a fan of the baseball games as well. I never got into the basketball games because I always thought they were too difficult. The only basketball game that I ever owned was EA Sports NBA Live, like '94.
Okay,
that was the last one, the only one that I.
You didn't play NBA Jam?
No, I didn't.
I like some of the goofier ones. I liked if you really want to go old school, NBA Jam or Jordan versus Bird. Some of these games were, but they were. It wasn't like NBA rules though. It was just they were kind of goofy, fun games. I like the basketball. Basketball and hockey were the ones I liked.
See, I was baseball and not basketball, but baseball and hockey. I like the football ones as well.
I've never been able to get into it. I just don't think I'm smart enough. I've never been able to get into the Madden games or the football games, and I know those are the biggest sellers of all. I mean, those are incredible games, and people love them. So I'm definitely not ragging on those games. My son plays them; he's great at them. But he always wants me to play again, so I'm like, I'll play other video games. I'll watch you play Madden. I'm just not.
You know what else was another fun one? I know you're not a soccer guy, but the FIFA ones were actually...
I was just going to say that, Adam.
We're actually...
I'm not a soccer fan of the actual sport, but soccer video games are great. In fact, soccer video games have always been great. They really have been. The FIFA games are great. They're great now. They were great in the 90s when the basketball and hockey and Madden games were, really changing and coming in. They were great then. And I mean, hey, Pele's soccer for the Atari rules. I mean, these, soccer games have always been really fun, really cool games. Even foosball, the turn in the, not the video game, but, go back in the days of the arcade with the
foosball table.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. It's great.
Were you a big fan of Sonic?
Yeah, I like Sonic.
I was a huge Sonic fan.
Yeah.
Huge Sonic fan.
I like Sonic 2 a lot better than Sonic 1.
Oh, yeah.
I feel it's a much better game, but I loved them both.
It seems like the story started with Sonic 2.
Yeah.
And Sonic 1 was kind of almost like a standalone game. Kind of like how Mario 2 is.
Yeah.
How it's kind of like a standalone game than anything else. But apparently a 2D Sonic game is coming to the PlayStation Store for the PS4.
Oh, cool.
Yep. $20. You can download this. I think it's called Sonic Mania.
Cool.
So yeah, Sonic fans are gonna have another game to go and download, which Like I said, if I was a video game player, if I had a PS4, it's probably something that I would go.
For sure. Yeah, I don't have a PS4 either, but that's worth $20.
Oh, absolutely.
Totally
absolutely.
If you already have the PS4, just get it, man.
And I know when you're doing one of the Houslander and Freddy hours, I think it was the last episode, when you're railing on, the ripoff.
Oh, yeah, the NES Mini.
It is the NES Mini, but that's a good price though. I mean,
this is good.
$20 for a Sonic for Sonic.
And
the
truth
Hedgehog
is,
game?
and this is a good example because we talked about this on Houslander and Freddy Hour. Is $20 for that game a ripoff? Yes, in some ways it is. It should be $5, but you know what? It's still worth it. $20 for a new Sonic game when you used to pay $60 for it back in the day. Nah, that's gonna be worth it. That's gonna be worth $20 of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's gonna be the only game in town for that particular thing. So you got to do it. That's cool. That'll be a fun game. I bet. You can almost guarantee that'll be a fun game.
Oh yeah, like I said, I love the Sonic games. Love the lock-on technology that they had. I thought that was. Well, it was revolutionary. I don't think you've ever seen anything like it since, but...
Sonic 2, such a great game. You know what? For you gamers out there, for you gamer nerds, if you want a true... You think you're a great Sonic player, and you love the old classic ones, and you still have a good functioning Genesis, or even just one of those new, the Retrons, Retron 3, Retron 5, one of those where you can play the old cartridges and plug in the old systems. The true test, if you are a Sonic player, is get yourself an old Atari controller. The old Atari joystick. Because if you recall in Sonic, you only have the one button. A, B, and C do the same thing. They're all just jump. All you have is D-pad and jump. So you can plug an old Atari controller.
Oh, really?
Because they have the same, they're the same thing. So that's a cool thing anyway. If you have an old Atari, and those junky old controllers are so hard to use, you can take your old Atari and you can plug a Genesis controller in, and it works great.
Oh wow! I didn't know
awesome.
that.
Very cool, fun tip if you have an old Atari.
Wow, how did that work?
It's crazy, isn't it? It's really weird, and it works great. It works so much better than the joystick ever worked on your Atari 2600. I believe in the 78 as well, but definitely in the Atari 2600. It's got the same plug-in, so you plug in your old Genesis controller to your old Atari and you can play it. But the true test, if you really want to pull your hair out, but also maybe, really have some bragging rights, plug an old Atari controller into your Genesis and try to beat Sonic with an Atari controller.
Wow.
I've done it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's a cool, fun way to do. I don't recall, you may have to plug in your Genesis controller to hit start in the game and then unplug it and put the Atari one in to get the game started. But then after that, you're clean sailing. It'll work perfect. And if you can beat Sonic with an Atari controller, then you are the man or the woman.
Now, is it true that you can play Master System games on the Genesis?
There's an adapter for it. Yeah.
Is there an adapter for it?
Probably kind of hard to find now. I have one.
Damn.
But yeah, definitely you can. It's something that goes kind of like the old the 32X or even like the Game Genie, but it's bigger. It takes up the whole top, and you can. It goes right over top, plugs in direct, and then you can play your Master System games on your Genesis. And it is cool because you can play the traditional Master System games, and there also were some Master System Hue card games, kind of like on the TurboGrafx 16. You can plug those in to your. It has that spot on the adapter, so you can play both types of Master System games on that adapter. The only problem is there is some. What is it? There is some difficulty with if you want to play, like they have their own Zapper games, their own light game games. I don't think you can plug that in.
Oh, really?
Because you have to be playing with Genesis controllers,
not
with the Master System controllers. Because strangely enough, although Genesis has the same plug-in as Atari, it does not have the same plug-in as Master System.
See, I wish I knew that because I was a big Wonder Boy fan as well. And if I knew that, I'd be playing the shit out of
Oh man,
Wonder.
you can come over to my place and play Wonder Boy on my. I have a game, and
you have Wonder Boy. Which one?
The first one.
The first one
for Master System, yeah. And I have my the adapter for Genesis. The only thing I've noticed, I've tried a bunch of games for Master System on the Genesis thing. I haven't found one that doesn't work, but sometimes the controls are really goofy.
Are they?
Because there isn't a set program, I guess, per se, that switched them over. So sometimes you plug one in and you'll find that like the start button does something. Like you might plug one in and like jump is start, or because Master System just had the like the 2 buttons.
It was like the old NES controller.
Yeah, so you have to use your 3 buttons on the Genesis, and sometimes it's like that doesn't seem right. Like that's not the way it should work. But they work though.
Such an underrated game too. I always thought was Wonder Boy.
Cool, yeah,
that was that Wonder.
Master System's got some cool games. They got some crap too, but they got some really cool games.
There's some crap. I mean, it was Sega's answer to the NES,
sure.
And the NES had some shit games as well.
Sure.
Many of which Rudy has world records in, but
yeah, I always tell Rudy, man, his games. He's a great gamer, but some of his world records, it's not that they're not quality world records, because they're hard games. He plays hard games, but like some of the games he plays, it's just like, who would want to play those games for that long, But he masters them, so I'll give him some credit. But I think that's about it. That's it for our news section tonight, right?
Yeah.
I want to throw out some quick plugs.
Go ahead.
For some of our future shows. On September 12th, we have deep issues of the September 11th conspiracy. So please don't miss that one. But again, that is not our next deep issues cast, because the last Tuesday of this month, we will be discussing zombie apocalypse. We're going to have some people in here with us talking about potential zombie apocalypses and giving everybody the creeps and wondering if if you're prepping properly for the zombie apocalypse, or if you don't need to worry about anything. But we're going to go very in-depth, very deep into the zombie apocalypse world. But next week, before our zombie apocalypse show, we're having a special not-so-deep issues program again. We did Star Wars Theory before, and next week we're going to bring back Brad Davis, our last guest, who was here for the Star Wars Theory, and we're going to discuss all things DC Comics, actually. So we're going to devote the entire show to some super nerdy, not so deep, not so serious topics, and we're going to talk DC Comics and have some fun next week with Brad Davis and me and Adam right here on theempiremedia.com.
Can we mention how Marvel is better than DC?
We can, sure. No, please, you can. I hope you do mention that, because Brad is a big-time DC guy.
Oh, is he?
Marvel guy. Yeah, so
are you a big Marvel or DC guy?
I like them both.
Do you like them both?
Really
You're not one or the other more?
I would, and I'll talk about this more next week, but my favorite characters, some of my very favorite characters are DC guys, but I always read more Marvel.
Yeah.
I was an X-Men guy. I always read more Marvel, usually. But I love Batman, love Green Lantern. So so I technically am more of a Marvel guy, probably.
Okay.
But
cool.
We'll talk about it next week, though. Come join us, please.
All right. We'll see everybody next time.